Okay, what's up, guys? I was just checking. So today we're
Hi, Carly.
watching scary animation.
Come on.
Oh!
My name is Pascal.
No.
I'm 22 years old now, but this event happened 3 years ago when I was 19. It happened
Oh my
in the middle
gosh,
of the night
guys,
when my
guys,
parents
guys.
were away for an important company
But
meeting.
it's sturdy.
The company was kind of far away from where we lived, so I stayed home by myself while they were gone.
Oh my gosh, guys.
One time, while I
He
was at
stayed
home
home
alone,
by himself.
I looked out the window
see what Carly-
randomly and froze. There was a tall man, almost dressed entirely in black. He was wearing a tuxedo and holding a kitchen knife.
Holding a kitchen.
This guy was standing right outside of the door,
Oh
looking
my
at me.
gosh, guys.
He wasn't laughing at all, and his head
I'm gonna
was
call
twitching
Carly.
continuously.
Nope, I was calling.
Sir, please get off our property. Otherwise, I'll call the police. I opened the window and told him. Then the man replied, "Oh, you can do that
Can
if
you
you want,
come over?
as long as you don't look away." Because of this strange attitude, I felt anxious. So I grabbed my cell phone. and called
Guys,
the
oh my
police.
gosh, oh my gosh.
But when I looked out the window again, he was gone.
It's gay.
At that very moment,
Amber and Anthony are
I
in
heard
my
footsteps
house. What do
coming
I
from
do? Come
downstairs. I suddenly remembered that I forgot to lock my garden door.
It's gay.
So it
Amber
was
and
still
Anthony are
open.
in my house.
I thought I was
What
gonna
do I do?
die at
Come
first.
over.
But then I pulled myself together. I got my bat and looked down the stairs, slowly, trying not to make a sound. There he was. He was just staring at me. He didn't move, but said, "I told you not to look away." A few moments later, we heard sirens. The man still did not move.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
But then
end
he
the
suddenly
call,
changed his
but
mind
I
and
will
walked over to
maybe
me.
in a little
I
bit.
tried to swing my bat towards him, but I was so scared. I couldn't do anything except scream. The police broke down the door. One policeman tried to arrest him, and the other one tried to take the knife away from him, but the man resisted.
Oh my god.
He was strong. Even though he was outnumbered, they couldn't stop him. They threatened to shoot him in the
guess
foot,
what? I made that
but he didn't care.
Video.
Furthermore, he attacked the two policemen, and they tumbled down to the ground. I ran to one of the rooms and slammed the door shut, but he
Guys.
kicked in the door. When the door opened, I could see his face, and I will never, ever forget that moment.
Oh my god, guys.
However, at that very moment, the police caught up to him and shot his foot. The guy started screaming in pain.
Oh my god,
Shortly after that,
guys.
he managed to jump outside of a window and disappeared. The policemen chased after him, but
Guys, go
unfortunately, they
upstairs or
failed to arrest him.
Guys,
I
go
never
upstairs in
saw
the
that
room.
guy again.
Go upstairs in your room. Go.
I'm glad that I survived that
coming with you
incident,
guys.
but I
Let's go.
also feel nervous
Why?
that he'll come to my house again. From that day on, I always made sure I locked all the doors and windows.
No. So what if you... Oh my god, guys. Want to poop your
Go upstairs.
pants?
Let's go upstairs. Go
Guys,
upstairs.
tell me what
Let's go
comments
upstairs
down
and-
below. If comment down below, want to poop your pants.
When
I
was
think
a
I
kid, I would often explore
Yeah.
the deep web with my friends.
So guys,
Specifically,
Wait, I'm gonna
weird
go get my
stuff and
lemonade. You
hidden.
guys stay here. Okay. Come on, I'm gonna go get my
There
lemonade.
were definitely a lot of links to choose from.
I'll be
I
back.
never clicked on the violent
guys.
links because I'm not into that. My friend Latrice told me to click on one that says new best friend. After doing so, it takes you to a page where you have to make a profile. I put the name Lisa on my profile. My real name is Susan. Once I made the profile, you are directed to a main page that has categories. They were silly, serious, smart, and smothering. We clicked smothering. I thought it was funny. After choosing, there was a list of people with their pictures, male and female. I clicked on the profile of a guy that had the name 5, like the number 5. I entered, and it didn't seem like someone who would be a smothering friend. When I was searching through his profile, I received a message from him asking if I were looking for a friend. I looked at Latrice, and she laughed, but also told me to respond yes.
oh my god.
So we're messaging back and forth
Guys,
for maybe 30 minutes, and then Latrice had to go. I told him I'll be back on tomorrow, and he said okay. Maybe a week went by where I would talk to him every night. He seemed very nice, so we exchanged numbers so we could talk more.
Oh my gosh, one of your crabs are out.
Everything seemed fine until I clicked on
Right
another
here.
profile and someone else messaged me. I started talking with this other person, but still was texting the guy at 5, which I knew his real name now as William. The new guy had the name Bill on his profile.
Well, guys, it's class
A
time.
day went by, and he seemed cool, but then William randomly asked me why I was talking with Bill. I didn't know what to say, so I never responded. He kept texting with angry messages, so I blocked him. I didn't receive any texts, only a single message on that site, and it said soon. One day after school, my friend Latrice came over to have a sleepover. We got comfortable, went to my room, and did our usual of surfing through the web, being nosy. I brought up that guy. Then I received a text message that said, "Why'd you block me?" from a random number. I replied with a question mark. Then it replied, "It's me, William." He texted me from another number after I blocked him. I told Latrice how creepy this guy is. Then Latrice stopped me from talking because she thought she heard something. Then I heard a voice. "I'm not that creepy." We both responded by screaming and looking around. I saw someone coming from under my bed, so we ran screaming out of my room, and my mother called the cops. They didn't get him because he left through my window, and nothing could be traced back to him. I'm starting to think that he was both of the people I was talking to. That definitely opened my eyes to the dangers of the internet. I would never visit the dark web again.
Oh my
A few
god,
years ago,
guys!
me and my family went on
I'm
our yearly holiday to Madeira,
I don't
which is
like
the
that.
birthplace of my parents. It was pretty normal for us to go anyway, as our grandparents were living there. We would sleep in one of our grandparents' home, and during the day, we would go to festivals. If you do not know much about Madeira, then this story will probably give you a better idea. It's not that a physical thing occurred that holiday. It was just this nightmare that became very real
Oh,
for
guys,
me as a child.
guys.
As I said before, I was staying at my grandparents' house while in Madeira. I had a room to myself on the upper floor. It was pretty creepy since my grandmother loved Victorian-style dolls. Once I was able to fall asleep, I had a creepy
You need to act.
Guys, no, she's pausing the video.
No, I wanna prank her. So what you
dream
need
that
to do?
I can't forget.
Guys,
Stop. I'm
I
gonna
woke
scare you
up,
again.
and from my bed,
gonna
I could
scare
hear
you.
movement on the floor. I looked down to see that the floor was covered in black insects, just crawling around. I could not see the brown wood floorboards and began to yell for help.
Alright,
Someone
listen.
opened
If
my
you
door,
listen to me,
and I
then
saw my
I'll-
little
if you
brother
listen to
come
guys,
me-
in.
we'll pause the video real quick. Okay,
Alright, ready? So, when you're gonna have to call Carly and you're gonna be like, "Hi, my parents just left. My mom's about to leave. So you need to come over and babysit," or something like that. You need to say that.
Okay.
You need to say you need to come over and babysit. Hold on, your phone's upstairs. Hold on.
Go get it.
All right, hold on. This will make sense.
Okay, guys.
You need to come and babysit.
And then once she comes to the door, we're sleeping like hanging on different sides. And we're just gonna jump out. We're like, ah! Guys,
We're gonna prank that.
go. Okay, guys, you're gonna prank her, but I'm gonna
From
turn
that
back
day
the video.
on, I always made sure I locked all the doors
Oh my
and
gosh.
windows. Yelled at them angrily and told them to go away.
Guys, no.
I went into the next room where my brother should have been asleep, but because it was dark, I couldn't see him. Well, I was a dumb kid.
Hey guys, I'm gonna prank somebody. Call me home. I'm gonna call her one more time. Alright, gonna start the video again.
My anxiety level rose even higher. I ran out, went downstairs, and none of my parents were around. I started to panic more because of what that lady in my dreams said, and I started to cry even more. Then I heard my older brother call my name from up the stairs. The stairs I just ran down. I told him I had a bad dream, and he stayed in my room after showing me that my little brother was snoring away in his bed. The next morning, my brother told my parents how I behaved. So my mother asked me what happened. I told her about the dream with the lady in the hideous purple dress. My mother's face became serious, and she looked worried. I didn't know why, since that was unusual for her. About 2 years later, I was going through my parents' wedding album in our home in Madeira, while I was sorting out the top floor of the house with my younger brother. I noticed that one of the pictures was ripped in half. I thought it was unusual, so I began looking through to see where the other half was. It wasn't in the album. I brushed it off. About an hour later, I was going through one of the drawers in the living room cabinet. I saw this picture of a woman in a purple dress. She looked almost identical to the woman in my dream. It was the same dress. I began to get goosebumps, so I put the album on top of a table and opened it to the page with the teared up picture. I began to shiver once the tear of both pictures fit perfectly well together. With worry, I began to ask my mother who was in the image. All I know to this day is that she is perceived as a witch and fled with my maternal uncle from Madeira. Soon after, the whole community began to believe it. This is possibly all just a coincidence, but it does send a shiver down my spine. I've never met this woman, but she appeared in my dreams. I have no idea on whether or not I will forget the specific details of that dream, especially since I found out more about this woman, who is my aunt-in-law.
Pizza? Oh my gosh, before that, she actually said she's gonna come over. Oh my gosh, really? Yeah. She said she was gonna.
This happened about 5 years ago. I was 11 years old, and it was pretty early in the morning.
No, she didn't say
I
that.
was in the backyard playing basketball with my younger brother before I headed to school.
Sorry, I didn't
We had a
mean to
basketball hoop in our backyard. Our backyard was located next to an alley, and our gate was pretty short, so anyone who walked through that alley could see right into our backyard. After playing for a bit, we noticed that two strange men in the alley were checking out our neighbor's backyard. I didn't feel safe around them, so I led my brother back into the house. We were going to ignore them, but after eyeing them a little longer, my suspicion about them turned out to be right. Watching them from the window, I saw one of them hop right over our tiny gate and was now in our backyard. Then we rushed to go tell our mom. My mom went straight outside to see two strangers standing in our backyard. She yelled at them angrily and told them to go away. She called 911, but they ignored her and didn't leave. One of the men just stared at us. All of a sudden, he went into the shed we had in the backyard and pulled out a lawnmower that was inside. At first, we were all confused and we thought they might be trying to steal it. Then my sister started to record the incident, thinking it might scare them, make them run away. But it didn't work. My mom called 911, and the men weren't saying anything to us. But one of them seemed to have changed his mind and was trying to convince the other man that they should just leave. Then the man who pulled the lawnmower out of the shed turned the lawnmower on. We were totally confused at that moment. A random stranger just comes into our backyard and completely ignores everything we say to him. Why would he go into our shed, pull out a lawnmower, and turn it on? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. However, his next move made even less sense and was even more insane. He flipped the lawnmower upside down and just stood there looking at it. A few seconds later, our confusion soon turned to horror after watching what happened next. He dived headfirst into the spinning blade of the lawnmower, which cut his neck wide open and ended his life. All this happened in the blink of an eye. My mom screamed at the top of her lungs, which frightened the 911 operator. I couldn't believe what I just saw and ended his life. All this happened in the blink of an eye. My mom screamed at the top of her lungs, which frightened the 911 operator. I couldn't believe what I just saw. I was only 11 years old at the time, but it must have been even harder for my younger siblings to watch that happen. A few minutes later, the ambulance and the cops arrived at the backyard. The police came by to ask a few questions, but the video my sister took had the whole incident on video, so the cops knew the story was legit. I couldn't help but feel bad for the other man that was with him. When the incident happened, he screamed too, started crying and begged us to call for help. But it was already too late. I didn't go to school that day because I was in shock. After that, I couldn't sleep at all. I had nightmares for a while. I wished we'd never saw that and wondered what happened to that man to make him want to end his life. I also couldn't stop thinking about our lawnmower. It was old and worn out. You needed to pull the cord multiple times, and with some luck, it might turn on. But he pulled that thing once and it started right up. Everything was odd that day.
At this window.
This happened to me when I was 17 years old.
Guys, it happened when she was 17.
I live in Canada, and this situation took place during a snowstorm at around 9 p.m. It was extremely dark outside, and I was waiting inside a bus stop shelter after my part-time job to get home. Although I live in a crowded city in Toronto, it was very quiet that night, and there were barely any cars on the road due to hazardous weather conditions. I was waiting all by myself for about 10 minutes until one man who looked like he was in his 50s entered the shelter. He had a disgusting smirk on his face, which made him a bit creepy looking. And that pretty large guy started making small talk with me. He had a creepy low voice, and he kept asking me what I was doing out in this weather and where I was going. I was feeling anxious, but there was only me and that man, so I told him I was going home after work. He smiled and said to me that the buses are going to be delayed because of the weather and won't be coming in for a really long time. I took out my phone to check the bus times. However, due to the deadly cold weather, my phone died completely. Then he came closer to me. He smelled awfully disgusting. "Hey, you want to come with me for 5 minutes?" he said. I said, "I'm sorry, sir. What do you mean?" He said, "Let's go hang out for a bit. Don't worry, you won't miss your bus. I will bring you back safely. Come on." I wasn't stupid and was aware of pedophiles, so I stepped back and refused. But he kept insisting that I should go with him. I was so afraid that he would do something bad to me. However, luckily, one lady came into the shelter, and the man immediately closed his mouth. After waiting for some time, the bus finally arrived. It was me, the lady, that creepy man, and 2 other people on the bus. He sat all the way at the back of the bus where he could watch me clearly, and I noticed that he kept staring and staring. I was so nervous, and when it was my stop, I got off along with the lady. And as I kept walking, I saw that the man got off with us and was right behind me. I freaked out and thought there was no choice at all, so I grabbed the lady's arm and asked her if she could walk me home because a man was following me. She also noticed that the guy was acting strangely, so she whispered that she would take me home. I walked with the lady, and when I looked back, he stared at me for a while and disappeared. When I arrived home, my parents and I thanked that lady repeatedly, and after that, I never saw him again in my life.
This game is actually what happens when Final Fantasy and Dark Souls have a baby.
Milady.
This game? This game right here?
You mean Raid Shadow Legend?
Oh my god!
I work as a nurse in a hospital, although I can't reveal exactly where because of privacy reasons. Recently, a fairly popular celebrity came to be treated here, although I can't reveal who due to the aforementioned privacy reasons. Honestly, I was pretty surprised he was coming here. Not to shit talk my place of employment, but this place has a bit of a record of being really bad in caring for people. Not that I'm a bad nurse or anything, it's just that a lot of the surgeons seem to fuck up their job and not get fired for some reason. This made it all the more confusing to me that this celebrity came here for surgery to remove a late-stage brain tumour. Speaking of, my friend Patricia was a huge fan and really wanted to be the one assigned to him post-surgery. She was even thinking of asking him for an autograph, which seemed unprofessional to me. Anyway, he was flying in for treatment tomorrow, but my current job was to assist a surgeon with the surgery of a little boy who swallowed a bunch of his toy marbles. I was surprised they decided to opt for surgery though, because they were previously recommended to wait for him to pass them. It was me, the anesthesiologist, and the surgeon in the room. I was staying nearby to the site of the surgery, and everything seemed to be going well. Then, the surgeon slipped and cut the kid's stomach lining open. It was horrific. The smell of stomach acid almost made me vomit as it began to dissolve his intestines. Despite our best efforts, he was dead within 10 minutes. What disturbed me was how unfazed the surgeon was. After we failed to save him, the surgeon left to break the news to the parents almost immediately after. I thought I heard the anesthesiologist mumble something under her breath, but I couldn't understand clearly. It was something about food. My shift was over though, and I walked to the subway to grab some dinner, then caught the bus home. I was pretty tired, so I watched some Netflix in bed until I fell asleep. That night I had a dream, or more accurately, a nightmare. I was in the hospital, and that kid was there in front of me. Only his whole body was hollow and his chest cavity was open and bloody. His eyes were gone too, but still, he stared at me, and the entire time he pointed straight down. I finally woke up, and with relief from being free of that dream and more guilt from the failed surgery, I started my day. I got to work and Patricia was fairly bubbly. She spent almost the whole morning talking my ear off about the celebrity. When he finally came in, she started freaking out and tried to walk up and talk to him. His bodyguards pushed her away though, and she returned to her duties dejectedly. Just before my lunch break, I was called into my supervisor's office. He said he had something very important for me to do, and that it needed to be done ASAP. He told me to go to the transplant centre and get 10 hearts, then go to the basement. I was pretty confused and wanted to ask some questions, but he cut me off and yelled,
Either you can do this shit right now, or you can walk out and kiss your job goodbye.
I was pretty pissed. He would fire me daring to ask a question, but the management would avoid firing the incompetent surgeons even though they should. I left in a huff to go collect the organs, and found them waiting in a case there already, with a note signed by the doctor that gave me access to a restricted room in the basement simply called Room 60. I didn't have the slightest clue what was in there, and marched onwards to the elevator and went down to the basement. I walked to room 60 and showed the security guard my note. He looked me over and said, "Oh, this is your first time doing this, huh? Sorry. Try not to panic if you know what's good for you." He then unlocked the door, and I stepped in. Immediately I was hit with a smell I would describe as rotten eggs, pennies and a corpse. The ground was slick with something and it was dark in there too, with only one dim overhead light. The room was pretty